Okay, now we're going to continue on to section 16.2, dealing with production and distribution. Now that you sort of have a product, you need to know how to manage the production of it and the distribution of it. So the objectives are fairly clear. We're going to explain what's involved in production management itself, and then what are some of the activities involved in the distribution and the management of distribution. Okay, so if you come up with an idea for a product or service, it's only one of the parts of creating a successful business. We all know that. You have to turn that idea into reality, and then you have to manage it. So production and distribution are two ways entrepreneurs now bring new products actually out to market, right? Lots more content, vocabulary for this, Gantt charts, PERT charts. You need to know those: QC, QCs, quality control, productivity, automation, logistics, etc. The main stuff we'll be discussing today. So please pay attention and relate that back to the content for vocabulary. So production management, what is that? Once you develop a prototype, you need to basically now plan for its production, its actual production with volumes and quality, and making sure it's delivered on time through distribution. So what is production management? All right, it really involves three main functions. The first is sort of acquiring the resources needed to create the product. Okay, so this is the input stuff. Okay, we're going to create an end product or service. What do you need? Where do you get that? So this is the procurement side of things we were just going through in class. Then you need to take those inputs and convert those into the actual product or service. So how would you do that? Do you do it yourself, or are you just the creator? Do you just give it to someone else to do? However, either way you do it, it needs to plan. You're looking for highest quality at lowest cost. And finally, in terms of production management, you got to make sure they meet the standards that you've set. So when you deal with the quality, we deal with the reliability, you deal with the longevity, you're going to have to make some claims, you're going to have to sort of make some guarantees into the marketplace. You're going to have to make sure that it gets manufactured to that specification, and that the manufacturer knows that, and they're willing to commit to that. Okay, so in production management, I created this little wheel here from the book. It's not, I don't think this picture's in the book, but scheduling, QC, productivity, automation, and maintenance. These are the sort of the areas that you go through when you talk about sort of production management and distribution. Okay, so first up is scheduling. Right? So you could read this business plan, the production. You have to make a schedule. So one of the things you've been doing to create your plan and sort of create NewCo is looking at scheduling. Now, these schedules describe each activity that must be completed, and there's some great examples. A Gantt chart. Okay, so in your book, I believe it's on page like 382 or something like that, you have a Gantt chart. Well, what the heck is a Gantt chart? All right, here's the definition of a Gantt chart, but it's really an effective and a way to sort of depict basic information about a project. And you really do need to know some of these things. And there's feeders, and there's time associated with it, quantities and order numbers. So this is a way for you to sort of schedule your production. You look at a Gantt chart and you know when it's supposed to happen, how much is supposed to happen, the activities it takes, and plot it against some timeline so that you're comfortable in being able to make claims. If sales says we can deliver in a certain time period, you can go back to manufacturing, and the schedule says there's no problem with our Gantt chart. Another sort of diagram is called a PERT chart. Okay, and it's sort of this diagram to arrange and schedule more complex projects. And a real great example of this is on page 383 of your book. It talks about remodeling a building as a food carry-out business. Again, it's nice because it kind of relates to what we're doing. But it's the longest path through a PERT chart. It's the critical path. And PERT charts and scheduling dictates the length of time needed to complete each little project. So that is kind of a more detailed breakdown of the project schedule. Really super important. Okay, so once you have scheduling down, you know when you're going to get things, the inputs become outputs to some other buddy's input. You now have to deal with quality control. Right? So in quality control, okay, here's the definition right out of your book, but really deals with it takes time and costs money, but it's something I could tell you it's critical to having high customer satisfaction. Okay, to make sure your products are high quality, it may cost you a little more, but again, it's the cost of making it as opposed to the price and the cost of doing business. So you may find that if you're cheap and you have low quality, you may get this reputation and no one's going to buy from you. You get like 1 star as opposed to 5 in terms of some evaluation. So quality control and controlling the quality is absolutely key. And one way to do that is something called quality circles. And that's an internal process where you have a small group of folks that really they're looking at regularly meeting to say, okay, we're doing it this way. Can we get better? Remember Kaizen, the idea of you individually getting better and building a highly performing team? Well, if you have these quality circles, it's an effective way of improving quality because it really requires the employees to be responsible for their work. And, if you give them the metrics to do this and the opportunity, they're going to want to make high-quality products, right? All right, so what are a couple of the other areas of that circle? You have businesses in terms of using productivity and automation. And so automation is really cool because it can cut production time, reduce errors, etc. So you want to be able to automate, which means you're lowering labor costs. Let's switch gears to distribution management. And now we're talking about the product is being manufactured. How do you get it to market? Right? So a couple things. One is you have to have a great transportation system. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, the second thing you have to have is shipping and receiving. So again, you're going to need a process, whether you do it yourself or so you outsource it, to make sure you have shipping and receiving and invoices and POs that match, etc. You have to have storage and warehousing. If you're going to make things to deliver over a period of time and to commit to customer deliveries, you may in fact need to have build up inventory and have some storage of not just the end product, but maybe the inputs to make the product itself. And that comes down to then materials handling. So as you're bringing in materials, how do they get to where they need to get to in the time frame they need to get to? And then finally dealing with the client itself and going back and forth with distribution companies, you need to know the terms. Okay, you need to be able to have the delivery terms understood, no debate, very clear. And so if there is a problem, we know exactly where to go to fix it. Okay, so let's talk about transportation. Right? Let me just go back. Let me go talk about transportation. Now, this is where you're dealing with logistics. Logistics involves figuring out how to move a product from the producer to the customer. So one of the things you want to look at here is you want to make sure you understand this notion of logistics. And it's this planning and execution and control of the movement and placement of people or products, right? So that's sort of distribution. And it's really important. And there's things like common carriers. And this is a firm that provides transportation services at a sort of uniform rate. They're hired by businesses to transport products. So you have the use of some common carriers to do this transportation, okay? The other thing to consider is maybe a contract carrier. So this is a shipping company that transports freight under contract between one or more shippers. You may use that, or you may do a private carrier. So as sort of the privately owned operating delivery service, which is generally speaking getting smaller companies to do sort of like little kind of distribution going somewhere else. All right, and or some smaller location that's maybe more cost effective for them as opposed to a larger company. Even though some companies like Amazon, for instance, are working on creating drones to get stuff instead of using a private carrier, they can make more money and lower costs that way. Shipping and receiving, storage, material, delivery terms, these are all part of the management logistics stuff. So, what's involved in production management? Okay, so it is really three things. You're going to acquire the resources needed to create the product. You're going to plan how to convert those resources into products, and you're going to make sure the product meets some set standards, right? What about the activities that are part of the distribution management? Okay, you need to make sure you have transportation, shipping and receiving, storage and warehousing, materials handling, and specification of delivery terms. These are all kind of key, core, and common to having a great distribution strategy. And the bottom line is it's controlling the movement of products from the manufacturer to the end customer. You need to make sure that goes extremely well, and you need to analyze it if this is going to be part of your business.